Hey everyone, let's talk about a couple things today. One, we're going to show our new product, Bona ClearSeal, going down on this hickory floor. And we're also going to talk about just roller application, particularly with the sealer, on unfinished wood. What we did to prep this floor was, as the directions say, we sanded 80 to 120. With this one, we stopped at 100 grit. Then we burnished it with 120. Then what we did is ran the Tampico brush across the floor because we want to get as much of that really fine dust out of the floor as possible. We vacuumed the detail areas around the side where we couldn't reach with the Tampico brush and the buffer. And then we even dry tacked it, again, because we want to keep it as clean as possible to reduce any grain raise, debris in the floor, etc. Because, again, a big advantage of our sealer is that we don't have to abrade it for adhesion unless it's been more than 48 hours since we put down our last coat. So if we can keep everything nice and clean, we come back in an hour or two, the first coat's dry, then we can put down our second coat, or we can go ahead and start putting down our finish coats. So to mix ClearSeal up, we want to shake it up really well. And then we'll let it sit, typically for 5-10 minutes, just to let any foam, any bubbles defoam before we start applying. So I'll come back in 10 minutes. All right, so now we're back. The product's defoamed. We can go ahead and take off our lid, put the medium strainer in there. And I've also taken my applicator, so my roller and my cut-in pad, pre-wet them, but then we got them back to where they were just damp. We don't want a lot of extra water in these before we start applying. So we even take our roller and spin it out pretty vigorously, and then even take our cloth, our terry cloth towel, and wipe these down so that they're just damp to start, so they don't have to soak up a ton of finish to get kind of seasoned, but we also don't want them completely dry. And just a little about our method here. So when we're rolling on unfinished wood with ClearSeal or any of the other Bona waterborne sealers, in a room like this, I would be able to pour my line all the way across my headboard there and roll everything back all at once. However, if we're working in a larger room or something that's a little more cut up, or maybe it's a parquet pattern, something where I don't feel comfortable pouring across the whole room, you also want to learn how to work in sections. So that's what we're going to do here, is we'll pour about a third of the room, work a section all the way down, and then work a section back this way, and then work our last one out the door. And what you'll see with this method is that I'm in complete control all the time. I never have a ton of finish out on the floor. If something interrupts me, I could pull that puddle out and come back later and pull it back in. But let's just go ahead and get started, and you'll see what I mean with Bona's new ClearSeal product. So we're going to pour, again, about a third of the way across the floor, 4 to 6 inch wide puddle. I'm going to go ahead and get my cut-in pad loaded up with that so that I can go and cut in against my start-in wall. And what I'm going to do with my cut-in pad in working sections is I want to pull it as close down a board seam as I can. Okay, again, that's going to leave us in full control of this as we work the room. It doesn't have to be exactly on that board seam, but I do want it close. And then I'm going to cut in down my other starting wall too. And then we're going to have to add a little more sealer because we have to load up our roller. Once we've got that loaded up with product, we always want to roll back. Because the roller puts it on heavier than the cut-in pad, we want to roll back over where we already went with the cut-in pad just to ensure an even application. And that includes up the sidewalls. And then we can go ahead and start pulling this product out onto the floor. And when I get over to the side, I want to again run my roller as close to that board seam as possible. I don't have to go over it, but as close as possible just to ensure that even coverage. Then I'm going to pour my next line. I'm going to pull my cut in down the wall. I'm going to get some more sealer and pour it down, pull it down my board seam. And then again, I'm going to roll my middle. There's a couple different ways you can roll. I kind of like to pull everything out like this with just a slide behind method to just get the puddle worked out first. When you get next to the wall, you can always flip your roller so that you can get it right next to the wall. And we're going to feather by pushing away from ourselves. So now I'm going back, and also this side of the roller is a little bit heavier than this side because of the bar. So that's always my leading edge as I'm moving across, so I'm feathering on this side. And that'll give me some nice even coats, again going down as close as I can to that line, but I don't have to go onto the unfinished side. So we're going to continue to just work sections like this throughout the floor until we get to the end. One thing you're going to notice about ClearSeal is how well it avoids pulling tannin, adding color. It just leaves that nice, clear, natural look in your floor. You'll see here with my, my foot marks right there, which I didn't do on purpose, but that definitely happens once in a while. And on this side, again, I can take my cut-in pad, pull it right back up the other side of that board seam, maybe crossing a couple hairs over. I want to make sure I get full coverage, but let's do this here. Let's leave some product out here so that we might, we would be risking getting a shadow with maybe some other products if we just left them there. And with my footprint that's been there for a while. But with ClearSeal, and it's really just wetting out, so it's got a really nicely balanced pH level where when you go back over those lines, right, and it fully wets out, any of those lines are just going to go away. And we'll look at it again right here. So sometimes with sealers, right, if you've left your lines like that in your roller, depending on what species and stuff you're working on, those lines may tend to show up when you go back over, and you can't leave them there too long. You'll also see that here I'm not pulling just down the board seam, I'm pulling down the middle of this board, again, which is fine just as long as I'm consistent and I'm just trying to pull that line, keep it nice and straight so that it hides inside the framework of the grain of the wood. So again, what you're going to see is like in this area, right, as soon as I get the ClearSeal back over it, you can still see that mark, but watch as it goes away very quickly here. So you don't get any burn in and stuff with ClearSeal as you might with some other sealers out on the market. Another key is just our coverage rate, right? If we want to get 500 to 600 square feet per gallon, the roller will definitely give us that, if not even a little thicker. And the key is just to use fingertip pressure. So I'm not pushing down on the roller. I'm not trying to stretch this stuff out. I want it to go down and leave a nice film so that I've got the build and stuff that I need to put my finish coats on, and so the floor doesn't look thirsty, causing me to put perhaps another coat of sealer and or finish on at the end because I stretched the the coat's too thin. One other thing I like about this method is just when we get to the end of the job, you'll see when we T-bar, we've always got a puddle that we're dealing with, and the closer we get to that wall, we want to make sure that we don't have too much finish. Otherwise, we're trying to soak it up with rags and everything else. When I'm using the section method with the roller, I'm in perfect control of the amount of finish out on the floor all the time. So I know when I get to the end, I'm not going to have just a big puddle of finish that I've got to worry about what I'm going to do with it all. So it's a lot less stressful when you're applying because of that, and you're not wasting any product by having to soak it up with rags and stuff at the end. And then when we get to the end, I'm still going to want to roll everything, but I also want to keep my cut-in pad handy in case I need to finish off just some detail areas with it. But again, wanting to roll everything out so that we have a nice even application across everything with the roller. You can see how, again, I've got the perfect amount of finish out. I'm never having to soak a bunch of it up, and stay in perfect control of the whole job when I'm rolling in sections. All right, so that's it. That's rolling Bona ClearSeal in sections on an unfinished floor. It gives us that nice natural look that we're after. You can see that we didn't have any burn-in marks. It didn't leave marks if we had to leave our puddle, or even when I stepped in it a little, didn't leave those in the floor. Super easy product to work with, nice light natural color, easy to roll. So if I want that kind of look in a product or my floor, from here on out, this is the product I'm going with, Bona ClearSeal.